Hey friends, welcome back to Christian Podcasting Secrets. I'm your host, Tammy Munson, and I am so excited that you are here because today we are talking about something that comes up for a lot of podcasters. How to navigate pop culture into your content, especially as a Christian podcaster. Movies and music and books and viral trends, it shapes the world around us. And chances are your audience is paying attention to that too. So how do we engage with cultural topics in a way that keeps our podcast relevant while staying grounded in our faith? That's exactly what we are diving in today, my friend. All right, let's get started. Before we dive into all the things pop culture, I wanted to remind you that I will be moving to Little Rock next week. Wow, that came up really fast. So there will not be an episode next week or the following week, but I will be back on March the 5th, and I can't wait to catch up with you and fill you in on all the things, the good, the bad, and the not so great. But in the meantime, make sure to subscribe to the email list over on wildfirecreativecompany.com and make sure to follow me on social media if you are not already doing that. I'm going to be updating through the whole journey. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. So here's the thing. Pop culture is not just entertainment. It shapes conversations, it influences beliefs, and often reflects what's really happening in the world, spiritually, politically, socially. And that means as Christian podcasters, we just can't ignore it. We can't pretend what's really going on out there. But here's the key. Engaging with pop culture doesn't mean endorsing everything about it. Instead, it's about using it as a bridge to open up meaningful discussions. Think about how Jesus taught. He used everyday stories that people were able to relate to, in some way referencing cultural moments, things that are happening around us, can help your audience connect those biblical truths to the real world. For example, a major movie might come out that deals with themes of redemption and sacrifice and love. And that's a perfect opportunity to tie it back to that ultimate story of redemption, Christ's sacrifice for us. So how do we engage with pop culture, with secular things, in a way that allows us, that stays true to our faith? Because let's face it, a lot out there might not reflect Christian values. I mean, we know a lot of it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that we can't be part of the conversation. Now, as Christians, we have a solid foundation in God's Word. But before we start bringing up trending topics, or we choose to review a piece of media, or talking about something that is relevant in pop culture, we need to ask ourselves, does this align with biblical truth? How does it reflect or even challenge the values we hold as believers? It's not about looking for perfection, because we're not going to find that in pop culture a lot. But it's about discerning what's worth discussing and what might need a gentle critique. So maybe you've recently seen a movie that touches on themes of forgiveness, but some of the content may be a little, how should we say, problematic. We all know there's all kind of movies out there that kind of meet that guideline, right? But we can acknowledge both sides in our discussions and help our audience see that through a biblical lens. Now let's talk for a minute about boundaries. So the thing here is everybody's boundaries are different. Everybody has had different life experience, different ways they were raised, different types of churches, different things that they experienced within the church. And some podcasters might feel very comfortable discussing secular music or TV shows or movies, while others might feel, you know what, I'm just going to stick to talking about faith-based content. And that's okay. You got to decide what works for you, your audience, and what's going to keep you consistent. I know, there's that word again. I feel like I talk about that word every single week, but it's really important. So if you are trying to decide, should you do more pop culture content on your show? I want you to take some time to pray about what those boundaries are for you. Ask God for wisdom on what you should and shouldn't cover. Because when you're clear on your boundaries, it's easier to stay focused on your mission. So I absolutely love storytelling. Most creatives and content creators love storytelling. And one of the things I love about it, whether it's movies or books or music or what's happening in different segments of pop culture, is that often we find those echoes of biblical truths, even in the secular content. Themes like sacrifice, redemption, grace, love, they tend to show up everywhere. And as Christian podcasters, we can use these moments as conversation starters. For example, you're watching a Marvel movie and maybe it's illustrating themes of sacrifice and heroism and love. You may not agree with what's in the movie, but you can use those themes to illustrate your point with your audience to our ultimate hero, Jesus. Now, one of the best things that we can do for our audiences is to help them think critically about what they're consuming. And I'm not just talking about the time that we spend on Facebook and Instagram or whatever platform you're on these days, but in all things that we're consuming. And instead of saying, that movie is the worst, that chosen show, don't even watch it because it's not any good, or this book is amazing, we should be asking deeper questions. Questions like, what message is this sending? How does this movie compare to what the Bible teaches? How can we engage with all of this content in a way that honors our faith? Because this approach, this type of storytelling, helps your audience build their discernment muscles. They can make thoughtful choices about what they watch, they read, they listen to, they consume. So let me tell you a story about one of my former coaching clients. Her name is Rachel, and she hosts a podcast where she reviews books from a Christian perspective. Now, she just doesn't do faith-focused or Christian-focused books. She doesn't avoid the secular. But what she does do is she reads them through a biblical lens and helps her listeners do the same. So by offering this thoughtful analysis and encouraging critical thinking and discernment, she has built this loyal audience that trusts her perspective. Gets people thinking about things they may not normally be thinking about. And I love that. So I'm sure there's somebody out there listening going, wait a minute, Tammy, we have to avoid pop culture. No, I don't believe that we do. I think the key here is this, that we need to engage with it thoughtfully, prayerfully, and with discernment. We talked a little bit about why pop culture matters and how to engage with it. But let's talk about some practical ways that you can incorporate some of these things into your podcast. Number one, use pop culture as an icebreaker. Sometimes you can start your episode with a pop culture reference that's going to grab your listeners' attention. It's going to hook them. It's a great way to hook an audience. And it's going to set the stage for your show and your ultimate message there. It could be something like, hey, did you see that video that's been going around on Instagram that everybody's talking about? Well, it reminded me of something Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. Something like that. Because this approach draws your audience in by showing that you're aware of what's really happening in the world. And then you can seamlessly shift the focus to biblical truth. Now, reviews are another great way to engage with pop culture. while still offering something of value to your audience, because that's what they want to hear and or see, depending on the type of podcast you have. Now, you can review movies and music and books. So with movies, what you can do, an easy way to do this, is break down those themes, those characters, the message, and then compare it to what the Bible actually teaches us. With music, you can analyze song lyrics and discuss how they reflect or maybe even conflict with biblical principles. With books, you can highlight key takeaways and then offer some faith-based insights. Now, granted, some of this may bring a little controversy to your show. And my friends, believe it or not, that is not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to get people talking. They're going to come and take a listen. Don't hide away from controversy too much. Because the thing here is this. Pop culture is full of teachable moments. Whether it's a celebrity who is making headlines for some random act of kindness that they've done, or maybe it's a controversial social trend. Maybe it's just straight up politics. You don't have to get into the politics, but you can use these moments to spark meaningful conversations about faith. Forever will be a big debate about cancel culture. We've all seen it. We've all heard it. It's definitely out there, and I don't know if it's going away anytime soon. I wish it would, but that's just the reality of our world, right? But you can use that as an opportunity to discuss grace and forgiveness and how Jesus calls us to respond when people make mistakes. Because we're only human. We're going to make mistakes. Incorporating pop culture also gives you a way to engage with what your audience actually wants. Because we're always talking about we want to give them what they need. We want to fill those gaps in the needs and the wants and helping them fix their pain points, right? So one thing that you can do is you can ask your audience what they're watching, what they're reading, listening to, and then you give them what they want. You create the content based on their response. Because this not only keeps your show relevant and fresh, but also shows your listeners, your community, that you care deeply about what's important to them. Friends, I hope that you are feeling inspired to start engaging with pop culture in some way if you're not already doing it. Engaging in a way that strengthens your message and connects with your audience without compromising your faith. So before I go, quick reminder, I am moving next week. Like I said at the top of the show, it will not be a new episode until March the 5th. Where I will give you all the info on the move and all kinds of things like that. But in the meantime, make sure you are subscribed to the email list. And of course, follow me on Instagram so you don't miss any of the updates. And as always, if you found this episode helpful, would you share it with a friend or two? You can also leave a review if you would like, because that truly helps this show reach more podcasters like you. So until next time, my friend, I want you to keep showing up. I want you to keep speaking boldly. And don't forget, your story matters way more than you know. I'll see you on March the 5th. Hope you have a great couple of weeks. Bye, y'all.